And that ideological drive to protect and to promote the market developed, of course, out of a previous period of crisis in the United Kingdom and across the world during the 1970s. And the driving force behind it was one thing: the drive to the need to restore the profitability of big business here and throughout the world. And that is what lay behind the emergence of the politics, first of Thatcher and Reagan, and then the gradual emergence of a new consensus, what's become known as neoliberalism. And it has led to a long period of attacks on working people, what we might describe as a long war on working people across the world, with the United Kingdom, the UK government and the US government at the head of that attack. And it fits into a whole range of policies which are being discussed here today. The attacks on trade union rights and the absolute refusal of this government to make any significant concessions in that respect. The drive for privatisation of our public services. The drive to deregulate the world of finance. The attacks which again were mentioned here this morning on welfare. Policies designed, as they see it, to make the labour market function effectively. And I think the starting point for any debate around this, either among socialists or in the trade union movement as a whole, is to recognise this agenda for what it is: a class agenda. A class agenda that has gradually been accepted as the mainstream political thinking across all parties here and throughout Europe, and indeed generally throughout the world. It's now built into EU competition law. It is now built into the thinking and operations of the IMF and the World Bank. And all of that needs to be acknowledged and recognised if we as a movement are going to start to respond and to fight back. And I just want to touch briefly on this debate about nationalisation, because we've heard some jokes in the House of Commons about this, about the number of banks which had been nationalised. And I've heard some Labour MPs appear to be revelling in this pseudo-radicalism, is what it is in truth. Because I think we need to be clear that the billions of pounds of taxpayers' money used for the bailout of the banks, and the billions and billions of dollars of US taxpayers' money used in the same respects in the United States, is about one thing. If they are nationalisation only in this respect, it is the nationalisation of the losses of the banks, i.e. it is the requirement of the taxpayer to pay for the failings of their system. And we need to recognise that for what it is. So we have the socialisation of the losses. But previous and indeed any future gains will of course be handed back to exactly the same people, exactly the same system who have put us in this place in the first place, and we need to recognise that from start to finish. Now I think in relation to the debate this afternoon that there are several challenges and opportunities in this situation. In terms of opportunities, I think the first one, the primary one, is precisely to challenge the ideology of the market. Because the truth is, recognised by everyone here, recognised increasingly in the trade union movement, and I believe recognised increasingly by ordinary people, is that the market does not work as it was promised to work. It cannot deliver ever-increasing living standards. It cannot deliver stability which working people require. It does produce, indeed, the disgusting excesses which even the Daily Express finds itself forced to condemn and to complain about. In terms of challenges, there are challenges about how we as a movement respond. And I think there are some issues which the left in the movement, but indeed the movement as a whole, needs to take up and discuss and debate. The fact is, for all of us in individual trade unions, that no individual trade union can resolve the problems of our members in respect to these wider economic problems. I represent firefighters, and we fight for the pay, condition and jobs of firefighters. But we in the Fire Brigade Union cannot solve the problems that firefighters face in relation to their mortgages, to the threat of repossession, to the threat of inflation. That is a wider political challenge, and we as a trade union need to argue with our colleagues in other unions for a broader approach, a political response that is in the interest of all working people in trade unions and indeed beyond them. I believe that in relation to that type of debate. There will be a whole range of views about the sort of programme which should be put forward. Now, I have to say, in terms of my own views and the views of the fire brigade, we're willing to make concessions. We're willing to, if you like, water down what we demand for. I would like us to see go further. But I think there are policies in all of the trade unions. There are policies of the TUC itself, which we need to demand are turned from paper policies discussed and voted on every year at TUC Congress and turned into a plan of action to defend working people in Britain today. And the starting point for that has to be that our people did not create this mess, and our people should not have to be made to pay for this mess that has been created. We need to demand decent homes for all, that we have this pseudo-nationalisation of certain banks. Well, we need to demand that if the taxpayer is bailing these people out, the taxpayer will demand that there are no repossessions of ordinary people as a result of this crisis. We need to demand that rather than allowing the market to see layoffs of building workers and building workers' apprentices thrown onto the scrap heap, but we demand a programme of building of social housing in response to the crisis today. We need to demand in relation to our public services an immediate commitment from this government to end any further privatisation. If the bankers can't even run their own banking system, why the hell would we want to invite them to come in and run our public services? We support every group of workers who wants to fight against redundancies and job losses. We need to, and the TUC has done some remarkable research work around this, around taxation. We need to demand that the tax loopholes are closed. A TUC report last year highlighted £25 billion missing by tax evasion on behalf of the super rich and on behalf of big business. A very simple and modest step, I have to say, is to start closing those gaps. And by the way, when these people come with the begging bowl to the public purse, we need to say, OK, well, let's see what you've done with the billions of pounds of profits you've made in the good times when you come and ask us to bail you out in the bad times. Let's put an end to the ability of multinational corporations at the flick of a computer button to transfer money around the globe and avoid taxation here in the United Kingdom. In relation to the N-word, nationalisation, let's actually start to put that on the agenda. And I think a very obvious starting point is in relation to the banks and the financial system. Let's demand the nationalisation of the banks, and for that to be used to launch a programme of proper investment in housing and public services for the benefit of the people as a whole. So it comes down to this challenge of who is going to pay for this crisis. A previous speaker mentioned the Prime Minister's comments about seeing the end of boom and bust. Well, at the TUC General Council earlier this year, we had the Governor of the Bank of England, again, who came and said very clearly that we were experiencing a minor blip. I suspect if he came again, he wouldn't be so cocky about his predictions for 2009. The fact is, the people who claim to understand and claim to be able to manage this system have completely and utterly failed. But we need to argue that this is not beyond the realms of human comprehension, that it is possible to analyse and understand what is going on in the world today. But I think the real challenge comes down to this. Somebody will pay the price for this crisis. Somebody will always pay the price. And the challenge for us in the labour movement is who is going to pay. Are we going to allow working people to pay? Through job losses, through house repossessions, and through seeing our wages eaten away by inflation or other means? Are we going to see our young people crippled by increasing student debt? And are we going to see our elderly people crippled by fuel poverty or by increasing care costs? Those are the challenges. Are we going to make our people pay for it, accept that our people pay for it, or are we going to use this as an opportunity to turn the tables and say, no, your system created this, your system has to pay? Thank you very much.